What's going on, you guys? It is Fatal. Welcome to my review, my very special review for the sake of 1,000 subscribers of one of my all-time favorite films. It keeps with the theme of the channel and with my personal passions because for some reason it has been pulled into the limelight again. I'm assuming by the up-and-coming Meg movie, which our American friends have already started to see and is now out today for us in the UK. Now, I'm still a little bit under the weather, but I feel like I need to show you guys my appreciation. So, as well as upgrading the tech, which I've done as you can see in here, this is the start of the 1,000 sub celebrations. Not the only thing, the start. We're looking at one of my all-time favorite films, Deep Blue Sea. Now again, because Meg's been in the limelight, Deep Blue Sea's been pulled into the limelight. Both CinemaSins and Honest Trailers have taken a stab at Deep Blue Sea, and to my absolute dismay, they've ripped it to shreds. I realize the film has a reputation of being so bad it's good, but in my opinion, it's just good. So we'll start with a very quick, spoiler-free summary because I'm hoping that, if nothing else, I'll be able to convince you guys who haven't seen it to give it a watch. So first off, the premise for Deep Blue Sea is one of the reasons I love it so much. The idea is that this research team is trying to find the cure for Alzheimer's in the brain tissue of sharks because sharks never show any loss of brain activity as they age, which is true. So I think it a very creative idea to seek the cure, or rather the aid of a never-failing brain inside the brain of a shark. Now, unfortunately, the main premise is as goes: faster, stronger, smarter, meaner, something like that. I don't remember the original posters. And yeah, in order to get the compound they need from the shark brains, they need to make the brains bigger. And of course, the sharks get smarter. That's the campiness to it all. But the film still takes itself seriously. And I think you can take it seriously too. So yeah, it's glossed over. As a side effect of the gene therapies, the sharks got smarter. Well, I never found that stupid. Every time I watch a reviewer say how stupid that is, I just think, why is that stupid? Okay, yeah, sure, we aren't actually going to perform that experiment, but that is not the most unbelievable idea for a plot that I've ever heard. Not even close. Quick backstory, I owe this film a lot because when I was 12, which is the first time I saw it, it came out in 1999, and then in 2002 I caught it on TV, and it cured my chronic fear of blood. How weird is that? Plus, cemented my all-time fascination and fixation with sharks. So, thank you, Deep Blue Sea, for that. So yeah, you get the idea of how the film's going to go down. The sharks are smarter, so they're going to plot their escape, they're going to chase their captors, they're going to eat them, but there's a lot more to it than that. And the ultimate goal of the sharks, I know that sounds silly, but bear with me. The ultimate goal of the sharks is so simple, yet so clever. So yeah, trying to do spoiler free here. So yeah, sharks start running amok, and the way they're able to start running amok, it seems planned, but there's an awful lot of convenience behind it. But it's full of some really gruesome, although they're not aging particularly well, CGI deaths and not so CGI deaths. There's a great balance between animatronics, and here's a fun fact for you. The animatronics from Deep Blue Sea are still used in shark research today. You can see them on the Discovery Channel, particularly on Shark Week. You can see the same Mako shark animatronics that were used in Deep Blue Sea. Cool as that. And it's this mix of CGI and animatronics and real shark footage that makes it such a fascinating compilation. Now, admittedly, yes, as I said already, the CGI hasn't aged especially well. In fact, I never thought it looked great back then, but some of the things they were able to do, digital shark-wise, in 1999 were very impressive. You think of the shark effects in Jaws the Revenge. It looked like a puppet. Let me know in the comments down below if you ever want to see me review that train wreck, by the way, because I could tell you so many things about that piece of cinematic trash. And the deaths in the film, as a result, are very gruesome. There's a scene where someone loses an arm, and it still looks really good today. I mean, really bad, but really good, if you get what I mean. Now, I'm not gonna start playing around with the idea that, oh, everything in the film is perfect. It's not. It's not. As spoiler-free as possible, it is not perfect. And some of the decisions made are very, very strange. But it never takes away from the film. That is so rare. I never found myself watching this and going, well, that's ruined the film for me. Absolutely not. There's a really good cast as well. You got Saffron Burrows, who you'll probably know pretty much from Troy and maybe nothing else. Depends on what kind of films you're into. And then there's Thomas Jane. Who's Thomas Jane? He's my man crush from when I was a kid. I wanted to be Thomas Jane. I was rooting for him in every film. The Predator, Deep Blue Sea. Hell, even The Sweetest Thing, I was still going, I don't care about any of the other characters. I'm rooting for Thomas Jane. He was my man crush. What can I say? But you've also got Michael Rappaport, a comedian for the most part, in the role that he gets in this film. Pulls it off. He's meant to be the one that eventually starts to succumb to fear. And I have to give him top marks because I so wanted his character to live. And say nothing about the presence of Stellan Skarsgård. Now people are a little more familiar with his work because of King Arthur and the Marvel movies, but back in 1999, he didn't do a hell of a lot that you would have seen. Then of course there's the infamous, everyone knows about it, Samuel L. Jackson appearance in the film, and he's built up to be the hero that's going to lead them to victory. So that will conclude the spoiler-free section, and I'm going to try and blast through the spoiler stuff as quickly as possible so we don't have a half-an-hour video. But thank you guys for watching up to this point. If you haven't seen the film, go watch this film! It is kick-ass! Alright, so if you're still here, oh boy, let's talk spoilers. So yeah, the main idea, we're going to cure Alzheimer's because sharks show no real loss of brain activity, no matter how old they get. Awesome concept, made even more personal by the fact that Saffron Burrows opens the film with a very impassioned speech about how she had to watch her father die of Alzheimer's every few hours or so, asking where her mother was. Now, I have an Alzheimer's-stricken grandmother, and she doesn't recognize anybody anymore, and it's hard, and so I feel a little bit of, yeah, I can see where her motivation comes from. Of course, she makes some decisions that are completely unethical and costs a lot of people their lives, but I see where her initial good intentions came from. So let's just skip to when things start going wrong, because everything seems to be going right. We're celebrating. We're going to do the big test in a day or two. Let's get it done. And they do the test and it all looks good. The cure for Alzheimer's is quite possibly there. They have brain tissue from an Alzheimer's patient, and the compound from the shark actually starts to bring the tissue back to life. It's a major, major development, but unfortunately right then, Stellan Skarsgård gets a little too close to Mr. Test Shark and whoop! In one of the goriest scenes in the film, loses an arm, and it's very realistically done. Now, granted, it's just a pretty obvious stunt double when the shot actually happens, but it's really, really convincing. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier when I said it was coincidental. See, the sharks know that they've attacked Stellan Skarsgård's character, or Jim, if you just want. Let's just call him Jim. And when he's getting stretchered away, the winch on the helicopter breaks and he gets dunked into the sea, grabbed by the shark, and slammed into the glass of the lab. Yeah, that sounds stupid, and it isn't the most, ooh, that's clever part of the film, but you're so invested in the film by this point that you just think, oh wow. But the idea that this whole plan of the sharks to rebel was entirely dependent on that winch failing, I don't quite buy it, but I believe it for the sake of the film because of what comes afterward. Of course, Stellan Skarsgård's character doesn't survive the smash through the glass. He's only wearing a breathing mask for basically keeping his oxygen flow pretty much balanced after his horrible, horrible injury. It's probably not going to function terribly well underwater. And then we come straight up to death number 2, which is hilariously awesome because you think that Samuel L. Jackson, he stands up to give this impassioned speech about how they need to pull together because he was part of this team that ended up in an avalanche that ended up resorting to cannibalism and murder, and he's gonna pull them through it because ice is so much worse than water, and he's standing too close to the mini-sub pool, chomp, and you actually see him get pulled underwater and ripped in half by 2 sharks, and it's just like, Samuel L. Jackson is toast in the opening half hour of the film. I totally forgot about LL Cool J. Now, you may know him nowadays as the really buff NCIS agent in NCIS Los Angeles, but once upon a time he was a comedic relief chef in Deep Blue Sea, named Preacher, always talking to God or his parrot. Oh, I totally forgot to mention from earlier, when Skarsgård was dragged against the glass, before he was actually in that situation where he could be used as a battering ram, the helicopter that he was still attached to via the winch was dragged right into the main structure. Kaboom! So now the whole place is sinking. Their main communications lady is boom, gone, big explosion. And while it's all sinking, one of the smaller sharks, gets into the kitchens and starts chasing LL Cool J around. And yeah, it's a pretty silly scene. He climbs to an oven to protect himself, and the shark accidentally, in my opinion, turns the oven on, and when it's trying to bash at him, and he starts cooking. So he uses the axe that he grabbed to defend himself to chop his way out of the oven by cutting into the top layer and then diving out into the water. And there's so much gas in the air, he chucks his lighter at the shark after it ate his parrot, which is a really, oh, poor parrot kind of scene. And boom, one shark down. But that was before Samuel L. Jackson died. So yeah, by the time Samuel L. Jackson died, there's only 2 sharks left. I should have mentioned that. So after Samuel L. Jackson or Franklin, Russell Franklin, I should call him. This is all off the top of my head. This is how much I love this film. They decided that Michael Rappaport, aka Thomas Scoggins' idea of using the main service ladders to get to the surface is a good idea, except for the fact that because there's a breach on the surface, there isn't enough pressure in the facility to keep the wet pool stabilized. So they open the door and poof, all the water that was being stabilized by the pressure, it just comes flooding into the facility, chases them right up the ladder breaks, and this is my most moment of the film, because the ladder breaks in half while they're all climbing, because Carter's a little bit further down, because he went down to try and crack open one of the doors with a knife so that water would run off there, and it does work. But Janice falls off the ladder and she's in the water, and instead of, doing the smart thing and swimming towards the ladder still propped up against the side, even though the other part of the ladder is sat on top of it like that, she could still scurry up the ladder that's on the side of the wall. She just kind of flails in the water, because the reason that the water's chasing after them actually isn't just the water pressure, because they managed to seal the door, but the big shark swims up the pool and breaks through the door, so the water starts flooding after them. Carter has to get it to run off. Carter is Thomas Jane, and that's when there's a shark in there chasing them, and it almost gets Carter, to be fair, but he just about avoids it. But of course, Janet's just freaking out in the water. I don't want to die. And there's me going, go to the ladder. But sure enough, and then a really quite terrible scene where the shark has her around the groin area and just thrashes her around in the air while she's screaming, and Carter's trying to grab her, and it's just like, oh, that was a tough scene to watch. But it's not as tough to watch as the next scene, because Scoggins at this point is so traumatized by everything he's seen that he's already starting to freak out a little bit. But he's bravely volunteered to go with Carter down back into the wet lab where all of this started, to reboot the generators so that they can drain the stairway and walk to the surface. They go down there, and you're just like, oh, he's so brave. But of course, that's where the famous scene from the trailer comes, and the shark just goes, just goes right for him, tears through him, smacks him up against the generators, destroys them, electrocutes him while it's ripping him in half, and then he's got the famous twitching foot afterwards. Yeah, that effect hasn't aged particularly well. All the while, Saffron Burrows' character, Susan McAllister, is in her quarters trying to get the data for all this so that they can at least salvage some success from the night. But of course, there's the shark in there with her, and she ends up having to electrocute it in one of the most pointless take off all your clothes scenes. But she manages to rip a circuit bridge wire clean off the wall. That is really tough to do, because those things are like solid metal, but she does it, and she shoves it into the shark's mouth, and it should in fact electrocute everything in the water, and she shouldn't be able to then step in the water, but whatever. And so yeah, Carter escapes the shark that killed Scoggins, like narrowly, but it looks a little fishy. Haha. It looks a bit like it kind of let him go, and you're just thinking, well, that just must be weird effects. No, it did let him go, and this is what makes the ending so crazy. So they have no choice now. They're 60 feet from the surface. They now need to just try and swim for it. And there's only one shark left at this point, the really big female. And it's like, that doesn't look like fun. And you get to see them hold their breath for a very long time. And unfortunately, when they get to the surface, before they can get off the water, Preacher gets grabbed by the shark and dragged through the water for a bit, but he does survive. He gets a really badly wounded leg, loses a lot of blood, but he gouges the eye of the shark with his cross, which is one of the harder things to watch in the entire film. And then Carter dives in and saves him, and then they start discussing how they're going to deal with this, because they're just thinking, well, we'll just wait this out. But then Carter notices, because at the very beginning of the film, one of the sharks breaks out and terrorizes a bunch of teenagers, and Carter has to go out and get it, and they never figure out how it broke out. The fencing above the water is just steel, whereas the fencing below the water is titanium, which, like, as Scoggins says, works like a net. This is where the brilliant thing comes in. Carter deduces, oh wow, what they've been doing this whole time is sinking the facility so that the steel fences will be underwater for them to smash through. I know that is so simple, but you think about that. You think about all of the events. The sharks are trying to sink the facility into the water so they can bust through the plain steel net. I love it. They can't just let this shark go on a killing spree on the open water. They have to kill it. So they come up with this really interesting, though implausible, way of using a volt battery, a really fat volt battery, to ignite flare powder lodged into a harpoon, shot into the shark, zap, boom. Should be simple. But unfortunately, the shark's too far away and is almost out of the fence. So McAllister slices her arm really unconvincingly with I don't even know what she's got, some kind of broken off piece of metal, and she doesn't just like dip herself into the water to attract the shark or whatever. She jumps in, being hopelessly far away from the shore. So inevitably it smells the blood, it comes after her and eats her, and Carter decides he's going to dive in to try and save Susan, which is stupid because then he can't get out, and then he gets the most awesome scene where the shark, like, because throughout the film he's been shown to be really good at handling the sharks, because at the very beginning there's this awesome scene where there's the same license plate from Jaws is in the mouth of a tiger shark, and he has to like sort of wrestle with it to get the license plate out. And it's like, and so he's displayed all these skills underwater, but this one, where it just open mouth goes for him, and he just does a front flip through the water and bounces off its mouth, grabs onto her fin, and then he's just going for a ride, screaming at Preacher to shoot it with the harpoon. And he does, but unfortunately he hits Carter's leg through the fin and staples Carter to the shark. So he's screaming, "Do it, blow it, blow it!" And Preach doesn't want to blow up Carter as well. But just as the shark breaks through the fence, he finally goes, he zaps it, boom! It looks like Carter gets blown up too, but he comes up to the surface and everyone's all happy and they make jokes about pulling their legs out of the water and can't wait for the next shift to show up. Awesome. So this movie is absolutely amazing. Like, to me, everything about it works. The characters all have great chemistry. The plot, while implausible, is just done in such a way that I could believe it. If they had those kind of facilities, that kind of technology around, I would believe it being a real thing, if that makes sense. So yeah, Deep Blue Sea, you have to see this, you guys. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this, because this, for me, is a legendary film. This is a near perfect experience. It's one of my top 10 films of all time because it has the best characters, the best action sequences, and some really genuinely scary moments. The first time you're seeing this film, it is quite intense. And it's just the second best shark film that there has ever been. The king will always be Jaws. I'm convinced the king will always be Jaws. But for my entire lifetime, it seems, well, 20 years anyway, near enough 20 years, Deep Blue Sea has always been the runner-up. There's been nothing as good as Deep Blue Sea, let alone as good as Jaws. Deep Blue Sea is such a marquee film for me because I was already passionate about sharks, but it was the film that solidified my fascination, my lifetime fixation with sharks. And I studied them for 15 years after watching the film because I just desperately loved sharks so much, and I loved watching entertaining shark movies so much, and I just wanted to make that into something. No one's going to agree with just how much I love the film because everyone's divided. A lot of people think it's great. A lot of people think it's campy trash that might be good in a bad way. I genuinely think it's an awesome movie. It's such an important film to me. It's a piece of my childhood. I will never let go of it. It is one of my all-time favorite movies, and I am going to award it the Mythic card. Overrated, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are going to think, wow, you've just seriously overrated that film. This is my opinion. I'd love to know what shark card you guys would give it, so please let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this video where I got to share one of my greatest passions of all time, which is the film Deep Blue Sea. The 1,000 subscriber celebrations will continue, rest assured. But thank you guys so much for joining me for this. Again, please let me know what you would rate the film in the comments below. And if this review makes you want to go out and watch the film, please let me know what you thought of it. And thank you guys so much for watching this video and so much for your continued support and love over the last 4 years. It has been incredible. But the last year in particular, we have taken such strides towards things that I never thought could happen for this channel. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. And if you liked it, tear that like button limb from limb. If you're still a hungry shark, take a big delicious bite out of the subscribe button, see what else is on the menu. If you want to be among the first to be notified of new content on the channel, go ahead and ring the bell. And thank you guys so much. I will see you next time.